Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere dusty, drafty, and full of lumpy mattresses. You're not in your bed anymore. You're stepping barefoot across uneven stone floors, dodging a rat or two as candlelight flickers against thick wooden beams. You're in a medieval sleeping chamber, but don't worry. You're not alone. You've got company. Nobles, peasants, monks, pigs, all of them snoring nearby. You'll quickly find that bedtime in the Middle Ages wasn't exactly a cozy escape from the day. It was more like surviving. You're going to lie on straw stuffed into a sack, or maybe, if you're lucky or noble, you get to sink into a mattress filled with goose feathers and fleas. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? I'm curious which corner of the world you're about to fall asleep in. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push open a heavy wooden door. It groans on its hinges. Everything groans, really. The floors, the furniture, the people. You step inside the sleeping chamber of a well-off merchant's house. This isn't a castle, but it's a step up from peasant life. Hanging from the ceiling are dried herbs meant to ward off bad spirits or bad smells. It's hard to tell. Your bed looks almost inviting. It's raised off the ground. A luxury, really, with wooden posts and a heavy curtain around it, not for privacy, but warmth. The mattress is thick and heavy, made of tightly packed feathers or even straw stitched into linen. It smells faintly of sweat and chamomile. You press a hand into the mattress. It crunches. Somewhere in there is a rogue bit of barley. Medieval memory foam, you guess. Beds in this era were more than furniture. They were symbols. A nobleman's bed could cost more than a servant's yearly wage. It wasn't just about sleeping. It was about hosting, about showing off, and sometimes about surviving the night. Nobles slept on ornate wooden frames, mattresses stuffed with feathers or wool, and layers of blankets made of fur or thick woven cloth. The wealthy didn't just sleep, they layered. One noble household inventory described 13 different pieces of bedding. You wonder how long it took to make the bed each night. Probably long enough to fall asleep standing. Meanwhile, if you weren't rich, well, welcome to the ground. Peasants typically slept on straw pallets, basically sacks filled with hay or straw, laid directly on dirt floors. No insulation, no elevation, no pest control. You lie down and immediately feel something twitch. Probably a beetle. Or 6. And the smell. Let's just say Fabrezi didn't exist yet. They relied on dried rushes and herbs spread across the floor to cover up the stench of sweat, smoke, and sometimes even livestock. Yes, livestock. You might have to share the room, or the actual bed, with your goats, chickens, or even the family pig. Not because you love animals, but because their body heat helps you not freeze to death. Now, here's the weird part. The noble beds, for all their grandeur, weren't exactly ergonomic either. Mattresses were soft in the middle and lumpy on the edges. And the pillows, basically sacks of old linen stuffed with rags. Sometimes they didn't even use them. Head elevation was considered dangerous in some places. Better to lie flat, like you were preparing for your own funeral. But let's talk bed curtains. If you've ever seen a medieval 4-poster bed with thick curtains and thought, how luxurious, let me burst that bubble. Those curtains weren't just for drama. They were for survival. The stone walls of castles and manors were cold. Cold like you can see your breath in July cold. Without central heating, the only way to trap warmth was to create a tiny microclimate around your body. Hence, curtains. And then there were the bugs. The bugs. Fleas, lice, and bed bugs were not occasional visitors. They were permanent tenants. You're scratching already, aren't you? Even noble households were infested. In fact, some bedding was made specifically to encourage certain insects to nest away from you. A decoy mattress, essentially. Imagine tucking yourself in at night and thinking, okay, hope the bugs go for the decoy and not my face tonight. There were even folk remedies, rubbing garlic on the bed frame, hanging dried mint to deter insects, or sprinkling ash between bed layers. Doesn't sound effective. That's because it mostly wasn't. You turn over on your crunchy straw bed. A little puff of dust hits your nose. You sneeze. Somewhere, a rat applauds. Now here's something historians still debate. Did people actually sleep well in these conditions? Some sources suggest medieval people were so used to discomfort that they didn't even think of it as discomfort. It was just normal life. Others argue that sleep disorders were common, and that's why so many strange bedtime rituals emerged. Like what, you ask? Oh, don't worry. We'll get there. But first, let's talk about something surprisingly cozy. Bed warmers. You probably don't expect much luxury, but occasionally, someone in a wealthier household would have a metal pan filled with hot coals. This was run between the sheets before bedtime. Medieval bed heating. Cozy, right? Except one wrong move and your bed is on fire. Oh, and if you're wondering about nightwear, no pajamas. Most people slept in their regular linen shirts or, brace yourself, completely naked. Linen was absorbent, cheap, and easy to wash. Going to bed in the nude. Not exactly scandalous. In fact, it was sometimes encouraged, especially if you shared a bed with others. Less laundry, more warmth, hopefully less judgment. And speaking of shared beds, that was normal. Entire families, parents, kids, grandparents, all crammed into one bed. Not out of closeness, but necessity. In some inns, you'd share a bed with total strangers. You pay for half a bed, and so does the guy snoring next to you. Cozy, huh? There's even a recorded case of a traveling merchant sharing a bed with 3 strangers, one of whom snored so loudly that the others accused him of being possessed. The snorer didn't wake up. He was probably the only one who actually got any sleep. Anyway, you roll over again. The straw crinkles. Your back protests. You consider switching to the noble bed with the feather mattress. But then you remember the fleas. So you lie still, eyes closed, listening to the wind through the cracks in the wall. Maybe tonight you'll dream of mattresses that don't bite back. But before you drift off, remember, you're just beginning your journey through the weird, scratchy, surprisingly intimate world of medieval sleep. And we've only just fluffed the pillow. You blink in the dark. You're not sure how much time has passed. Maybe an hour, maybe 2. The fire's gone out, and the silence is thick, broken only by the rustle of someone breathing nearby and the faint scurry of something very small with too many legs. You stretch. And now what? Sleep again, or do what medieval people actually did during the strange in-between time. Welcome to the land of segmented sleep, or as medieval folks might call it, just sleep. In the modern world, you might think waking up in the middle of the night is a problem. Insomnia, stress, too much phone time. But back in the Middle Ages, it was normal, expected even. People didn't sleep in one long stretch. They had first sleep and second sleep. You roll over and sit up in your hay-stuffed bed. No one's panicking. No one's whispering about needing melatonin. Across the room, someone else is already awake, slowly feeding kindling into the hearth. You notice them murmuring, not to you, but in prayer, quiet, gentle prayers under their breath. That was common during the watch between sleeps. This quiet hour or two was thought to be perfect for reflection, dreaming, or even sneaking in a snack. And yes, sometimes something a little more intimate. Some historians believe couples timed their marital duties during this waking window. After all, the kids were probably still passed out. You look around. The room has changed. The stillness is soft now, like a held breath. There's no sense of rushing back to sleep. That's not the point. This middle-of-the-night wakefulness wasn't a disruption. It was just part of the rhythm. A 13th century monk once wrote about how he used the hours between first and second sleep to read scripture. A peasant woman might stoke the fire, check on the animals, mend clothing. In some homes, this time was social. Whispered conversations in shared beds, like a midnight campfire, minus the fire and plus a lot more lice. You feel your eyes getting heavy again. But you're not anxious. There's no pressure to get back to sleep. You just let yourself drift back when your body's ready. It's strangely freeing. You wonder if we've overcomplicated things with our alarm clocks and coffee addictions. But segmented sleep wasn't just cultural, it was practical. With shorter days in winter and no artificial light, people naturally followed their circadian rhythm. It made sense to sleep early, wake for a bit, then sleep again until dawn. Candles were expensive. The dark was dangerous. So instead of stretching the day, they embraced the night, in pieces. Of course, not everyone was a fan. There were chroniclers who grumbled about the interruptions. Some religious figures even claimed that these nighttime hours tempted people towards sin. Too much free time in the dark, and you might start doing things that weren't exactly saintly. Some doctors of the period even began to recommend trying to train the body to sleep in a single stretch. But most people didn't bother. Why fight it? You can't fight the moon. And here's something weird. Some medieval dream manuals actually took segmented sleep into account. They suggested that dreams during your first sleep came from your body. Indigestion, physical sensations. While dreams in your second sleep were more spiritual, more likely to be visions or divine messages. So the next time you wake up at 2:43 a.m. and stare at the ceiling, maybe don't stress. Maybe you're just living like a 14th century baker, minus the sourdough starter. You lie back again. The room is darker now. Colder, too. You pull the blanket, scratchy, wool, vaguely goat-smelling, up to your chin. Somewhere, a rooster is already making noise. A bit early, isn't it? You sigh. Even chickens can't agree on sleep schedules. Before you drift into your second sleep, your mind wanders. Would modern life be better with this kind of rhythm? Would insomnia feel less like a failure and more like a chance to breathe, to think, to sit with your thoughts in the dark and let them drift? Historians still debate how universal this pattern really was. Was segmented sleep practiced everywhere? Did it change by region, by season, by class? There's evidence, sure, but also gaps. Gaps where memories once were, now filled with guesses and half-translated documents. But right now, none of that matters. You close your eyes again. Your breath evens out. The crack in the wall lets in just enough moonlight to paint a silver stripe across the straw. No clocks, no alarms. Just your body, your breath, and the second half of the night, waiting for you. You wake again, but this time it's not your body nudging you. It's a sound, deep, metallic, and oddly serene. Bong, bong, bong. A bell, 3 chimes, slow and heavy, floating in through the tiny window slits. You blink in the darkness. There's no sun, no hint of blue. The world outside is still cloaked in ink, but someone, somewhere, is already up. You sit up in bed, or what passes for one, and listen. The chimes are coming from a monastery nearby. It's matins, the monastic midnight prayer. And you realize something strange. While you were dreaming of warm bread or softer bedding, monks were already chanting under flickering candlelight. In medieval Europe, time wasn't just marked by the sun, but by prayer. Monasteries operated on the canonical hours, a strict schedule dividing the day into chunks of devotion. Matins was the first, a pre-dawn ritual, often held around 2 or 3 a.m., depending on the season. You wonder who had the job of being the monk alarm clock. Probably someone with strong lungs and very little sympathy. You quietly slip from the bed and creep to the window. There, in the distance, you can see the faintest shimmer of torchlight. Rows of figures in heavy robes walking silently toward the chapel. The night isn't quiet. It's disciplined. Inside those stone walls, candles drip wax onto old flagstone floors. The air is thick with incense. The monks chant in Latin, their voices low and steady, bouncing off cold stone. You can't make out the words, but you feel the weight of them, like a lullaby written for the soul, not the body. You shiver, not from the cold, but from the thought of waking every single night, for centuries. Because this wasn't just one monastery's strange habit. It was standard practice across Christendom. Benedictine, Cistercian, Augustinian. Each order had its own rhythm, but almost all included midnight worship. Imagine a life so regulated that even your sleep bends to it. Bells rule your hours. You sleep in short bursts, robe always within reach. You pray in the cold and fast in the dark. For monks, sleep wasn't for comfort. It was a pause between duties, a place to rest briefly before the next divine appointment. And those bells? They weren't just timekeepers. They were cosmic timekeepers. Medieval people believed the sound of bells pushed back demons, sanctified the air, and kept the world turning in the right direction. So when you hear those 3 solemn chimes in the dead of night, you're not just being awakened. You're being reminded. Time doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God. Still, you can't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for the sleepy monks. Eyes barely open, stumbling across freezing cloisters, muttering psalms and rubbing their arms for warmth. Did they ever doze off mid-chant? Did the abbot ever catch someone snoring during Psalm 42? Probably. But here's something odd. Some medieval thinkers believed that nighttime prayers made the darkness holier. That when the world was most asleep, most vulnerable, the prayers of the monks formed a kind of shield. Not just for themselves, but for everyone. You glance back toward your bed. It suddenly feels less like a nest of straw and more like a borrowed blessing. You didn't earn this rest. Someone else, far off in a candlelit chapel, sang your protection into the night. Not everyone appreciated this schedule, of course. Some monks rebelled against the rigid timetable. There are accounts of clergy sneaking naps during daytime readings or even bribing each other for early shifts so they could rest longer. The church tried to crack down on it, issuing stern warnings against spiritual laziness. Historians still argue over whether midnight prayer genuinely kept monks spiritually alert or just chronically exhausted. Some say the interrupted sleep caused long-term fatigue. Others say it deepened their contemplative state. Maybe both are true. Maybe enlightenment is just extreme sleep deprivation within sense. You lean on the windowsill and sigh. The bells have stopped now. The chant has faded. Somewhere, a monk has extinguished the last candle, and the chapel falls quiet again. The night swells with silence. You climb back into bed. You think about those stone floors, those stiff robes, that unheated church, and then you think, yeah, I'd last maybe 2 nights in a monastery before faking a calling to go herd goats in the Alps. Still, there's something comforting about it. The idea that even now, even in this strange old world, someone is always awake, praying, watching, keeping time. You close your eyes. The bell echoes linger in your ears, like a lullaby shaped from bronze. Sleep comes again, and this time it feels deeper, like it's resting on ancient chants and 1,000 whispered amens. You're not in your bed anymore. You're lying on something stiff, maybe a plank, maybe a bench. The air is sharp with the smell of vinegar and old herbs. Somewhere close, someone groans. Another person coughs, a deep, wet rattle that shakes the dust from the ceiling beams. You open your eyes slowly and realize you're in a medieval hospital, not the kind with white walls, beeping monitors, or nurses in soft-soled shoes. No, this is the kind where nuns serve broth out of wooden bowls, and your odds of recovery mostly depend on whether your body is feeling cooperative, or whether you've recently made peace with God. And as strange as it seems, this hospital wants you to sleep, not just because sleep is restful. In the medieval worldview, sleep was healing in the most literal sense. They believed the body restored itself during sleep, not by science, but by balance. The 4 humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, worked things out in your dreams. Or so they hoped. A physician might look at you, pale, sweating, one eye twitching, and say, "Ah, yes, he needs more sleep and less hot wind in his liver." Then they'd prescribe a regimen, boiled lettuce, a prayer, and a nap. You lie there, listening to the shuffle of sandals and soft chanting. The nuns are walking in a slow rhythm, their presence more soothing than clinical. They check the patients, adjust wrappings, tuck a loose blanket, whisper a verse. It's not exactly sterile. The windows are open for light and fresh air, which mostly lets in smoke and flies. Herbs hang in bunches above your head, lavender, rosemary, maybe a bit of sage, not for decoration, for protection, against disease, against demons, against dreams gone wrong. Because here's the thing, medieval medicine didn't separate sleep from the spiritual. Sleep could be a bridge to divine healing, or to something far darker. Bad dreams were taken seriously. If you woke up screaming, a priest might be called, not a doctor. Fevers caused by sin. Nightmares blamed on witches. Recovery meant more than just physical rest. It required your soul to behave itself too. So yes, sleep, but not without conditions. You're given a pouch filled with sweet-smelling herbs to wear around your neck. You're told to sleep on your right side. You're advised not to fall asleep angry. All of it woven into your treatment like thread through linen. A nun appears beside you. She hums as she folds a damp cloth and places it on your forehead. It smells like chamomile, vinegar, and something sharp. Garlic. You don't ask. You close your eyes and try to sink into the scratchy mattress beneath you. You're not in your bed anymore. You're lying on something stiff, maybe a plank, maybe a bench. The air is sharp with the smell of vinegar and old herbs. Somewhere close, someone groans. Another person coughs, a deep, wet rattle that shakes the dust from the ceiling beams. You open your eyes slowly and realize you're in a medieval hospital, not the kind with white walls, beeping monitors, or nurses in soft-soled shoes. No, this is the kind where nuns serve broth out of wooden bowls, and your odds of recovery mostly depend on whether your body is feeling cooperative, or whether you've recently made peace with God. And as strange as it seems, this hospital wants you to sleep. Not just because sleep is restful. In the medieval worldview, sleep was healing in the most literal sense. They believed the body restored itself during sleep, not by science, but by balance. The four humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, worked things out in your dreams. Or so they hoped. A physician might look at you, pale, sweating, one eye twitching, and say, "Ah, yes, he needs more sleep and less hot wind in his liver." Then they'd prescribe a regimen, boiled lettuce, a prayer, and a nap. You lie there listening to the shuffle of sandals and soft chanting. The nuns are walking in a slow rhythm, their presence more soothing than clinical. They check the patients, adjust wrappings, tuck a loose blanket, whisper a verse. It's not exactly sterile. The windows are open for light and fresh air, which mostly lets in smoke and flies. Herbs hang in bunches above your head, lavender, rosemary, maybe a bit of sage. Not for decoration, for protection, against disease, against demons, against dreams gone wrong. Because here's the thing, medieval medicine didn't separate sleep from the spiritual. Sleep could be a bridge to divine healing, or to something far darker. Bad dreams were taken seriously. If you woke up screaming, a priest might be called, not a doctor. Fevers caused by sin. Nightmares blamed on witches. Recovery meant more than just physical rest. It required your soul to behave itself too. So yes, sleep, but not without conditions. You're given a pouch filled with sweet-smelling herbs to wear around your neck. You're told to sleep on your right side. You're advised not to fall asleep angry. All of it woven into your treatment like thread through linen. A nun appears beside you. She hums as she folds a damp cloth and places it on your forehead. It smells like chamomile, vinegar, and something sharp. Garlic. You don't ask. You close your eyes and try to sink into the scratchy mattress beneath you. But one thing is certain. Sleep wasn't passive here. It was part of the prescription, a nightly return to balance, a test of the soul, sometimes the only medicine available. You close your eyes. The groans in the ward are quieter now. A bell chimes softly in the distance, signaling the end of evening prayers. You hear a nun whisper to someone across the room, "Rest now. Let the Lord carry the fever away. You're already halfway gone." Floating just above the straw and the aches and the smell of burning rosemary. And tonight, in this strange, holy place, sleep isn't an escape. It's an act of faith. You wake up again, but this time not in the hospital bed. You're surrounded by music, laughter, the scent of roasted meat, and a lot of people you don't know, staring. Not at you exactly, but at the bed in the center of the room. Welcome to your wedding night, or more precisely, to everybody's wedding night. In medieval Europe, sleep and privacy didn't always go together. Tonight, you're about to discover what happens when society decides that your first night in bed as a married couple should be a public event. You sit there, stunned as the guests, family, friends, and a few random villagers who heard there'd be stew, cheer and throw flower petals. A priest has already blessed the bed. Musicians are playing a slow, slightly off-key tune. And here comes the bride, her hair long and loose, dressed in linen that's supposed to look modest, but somehow doesn't, you're expected to get in bed now, not later. Now, no pressure. See, in the medieval mindset, marriage wasn't official until it was consummated, and consummation wasn't considered a private act. It was a community concern, because if the union wasn't real, neither was the inheritance. Land, titles, and family lines all depended on, well, this moment. So the community showed up, to witness, to celebrate, to verify. Don't worry. Most of the time, they didn't literally watch. Most of the time. But they'd escort the newlyweds to bed with songs and jokes, pour drinks, and sometimes even stay in the room to ensure that the couple actually lay down together. Some noble households took it a step further. They'd stay just long enough to see the newlyweds disrobe, get under the covers, and share a kiss. Or two. And if you were royalty, oh boy, there might be bishops in the room, royal scribes, even your mother-in-law holding a goblet of wine like this is completely normal. You lie back, fully clothed for now, and try to breathe. The feather mattress is soft, the sheets freshly perfumed with rose water, and yet somehow it's not relaxing. A nobleman raises a toast. May they be fruitful, he bellows, sloshing wine on the floor. Someone else makes a joke about heirs and spare rooms. Laughter erupts. It's not that they're trying to embarrass you. This is just tradition. The bedding ceremony, as it was called, was a blend of solemnity and bawdy humor. It confirmed the marriage and ensured that the couple started their life together with the support and scrutiny of the community. You pull the heavy blanket up to your chest and glance at your new spouse. They look equally overwhelmed. The two of you smile a little helplessly. Eventually, the crowd thins. One by one, the guests shuffle out, still giggling, still whispering. Someone places a cup of spiced milk on the bedside table, a fertility tonic apparently, and you're finally left alone. Sort of. Because down the hall, there's a scribe, waiting, with a quill, ready to write down whether the marriage has been confirmed. In some noble houses, the bed sheets were inspected the next morning for blood stains as proof of virginity. No pressure there either. This wasn't limited to one country. From England to France to the Holy Roman Empire, versions of this practice were common. In Iceland, for instance, laws stated that a marriage was invalid unless it was publicly known the couple had shared a bed. Even common folk joined the fun. Village weddings often ended with the couple being paraded to their home, sometimes in a wheelbarrow with children throwing grains of wheat and insults. Sleep, it seems, would have to wait. And here's the twist. People weren't just watching for spectacle. They were invested. Inheritance laws depended on legitimacy. A child born too soon after a wedding raised eyebrows. Was the union valid? Could the child inherit land? Was someone lying about a previous entanglement? These were high-stakes questions, and the bed was the courtroom. Historians still debate the emotional toll of all this. Was it humiliating? Comforting? Did people laugh it off? Did they internalize the pressure? Diaries and letters from the period are scarce on the topic. It's hard to know what newlyweds truly felt under the weight of 1,000 eyes. You roll onto your side. The rose-scented pillow is soft, the room finally dark and quiet. But it's not easy to sleep after being part of a medieval wedding bed spectacle. You wonder how long it took for things to feel normal again. But soon, your breath slows. You hear only the faint crackle of the hearth. The crowd, the ceremony, the toasts, they're all fading into the velvet dark. And tonight, for the first time, this bed, this very public, very ceremonial bed, becomes yours, not the community. Sleep comes slowly, but it comes. And for now, no one is watching. You wake with a start, rubbing your eyes. Something smells earthy, like soil and mold. You blink and realize you've rolled onto a small cloth pouch tied around your neck, filled with something squishy and possibly still moving. Oh, right. That's your medical toad charm. Welcome to another night in the Middle Ages, where sleep wasn't just a natural need. It was medicine, mysticism, and sometimes complete nonsense wrapped in linen. You sit up, gently untie the pouch, and peek inside. Yep, a dried toad's foot. Maybe some crushed mint. Possibly a dead beetle or two for balance. This isn't a prank. It's your doctor's prescription. And by doctor, we mean man in a robe who owns a few Latin scrolls and smells strongly of burnt herbs. Because in the medieval world, when sleep eluded you, or when nightmares arrived like storm cloud, the solution wasn't pills or therapy. It was sympathetic magic, bizarre concoctions, and deeply strange bedtime companions. Your particular diagnosis? Melancholy humors, causing disturbed dreams. The treatment? Sleep with a toad amulet beside your heart. Ideally one boiled under a full moon and dried in a linen bag. You lie back slowly, hoping whatever's in the pouch has truly stopped twitching. To be fair, some remedies weren't entirely absurd. People understood that herbs like lavender, chamomile, and valerian had calming effects. A cloth dipped in rose water and placed on the forehead. Kind of lovely. But others, less science, more grim fairy tale. For instance, to stop nightmares, one might place a knife under the bed, blade facing up, to cut the dream's path. A slice of raw onion under the pillow was believed to absorb feverish energy. And if a child cried in their sleep, some advised feeding them breast milk laced with mashed leeks. That'll shut them up, or ruin their taste for soup forever. Some treatments relied on divine assistance. You might sleep with a prayer scroll under your pillow, a saint medallion on your chest, or, in extreme cases, a scrap of bone believed to belong to a holy person. But if all else failed, they blamed witches. Yes, witches. If you had repeated sleep paralysis, strange dreams, or woke up gasping in fear, the diagnosis might be that a witch was sitting on your chest. Literally. The so-called night hag was a common medieval explanation for sleep disorders. You weren't just dreaming, you were under attack. To protect yourself, you'd need garlic at the door, iron at the window, and holy water sprinkled on your sheets. Preferably not directly on the straw mattress. That gets moldy real fast. You roll onto your back, still cradling your pouch of mystery herbs. The air is thick with the scent of dried thyme and something slightly sour. Vinegar-soaked wool, probably part of your sleeping robe. You've smelled worse. Across the room, someone else groans in their sleep. You wonder what potion they were given. A mix of honey and opium poppy, perhaps. Common for pain relief. Or maybe something less gentle, like crushed foxglove. Beautiful, deadly, and a favorite of desperate physicians with zero follow-up care. A few towns even had sleep charms drawn in chalk on walls near beds. Simple symbols meant to confuse evil spirits or invite angelic protection. Historians still debate whether these were religious or magical. Or both. As usual, medieval life didn't bother drawing clear lines between faith and folklore. You glance down at your hands. You're still clutching the toad pouch. Maybe it's not working because you forgot to sleep on your left side. Or maybe the local healer lied about when the toad was harvested. You wouldn't put it past her. She looked a little too excited when she handed it over. You sigh, you turn, you scratch your neck where the pouch is itching, and still, you stay awake. Not from fear exactly, but from the deep, surreal knowledge that this was medicine. Not measured, not standardized. A gamble, a prayer, a handful of damp leaves and hope. And here's the strangest part. It often helped. Why? Maybe because it offered something people desperately needed. A sense of control. When the world was full of unknowns, plagues, war, early death, placing a charm under your pillow wasn't foolish. It was comforting. A whisper that you might survive the night. Modern medicine would laugh, of course. But modern people still take melatonin gummies shaped like bears. So maybe we haven't come that far. You close your eyes. The herbal smell begins to feel pleasant, earthy, calming. Somewhere outside, a night bird calls. A breeze rustles the drying herbs above your bed. And for a moment, the toad charm works. Not because of magic, but because you believe it might. And sometimes, that's enough. You wake up, and it's still dark. You shuffle to the window, pull open the shutter, and blink into what looks like the same heavy blackness as last night. No sunrise, no color, just frost-laced silence. And the cold. It's the kind of cold that climbs inside your bones and rearranges your understanding of suffering. Welcome to medieval winter sleep, and you'd better get used to it. Because you're going to be in this bed for a long time. In the Middle Ages, people didn't just sleep at night. In winter, they often slept through it. You climb back under your woolen blanket, which now feels like a wet burlap sack. You lie very, very still. Moving too much means letting heat escape, and there's not enough heat to spare. The hearth has long since gone out. The stone walls are sweating cold. Your breath clouds the air like a ghost. Sleep becomes a strategy. For peasants whose work ground to a halt in deep winter, there were fewer tasks to demand attention. The fields were frozen. The animals were half hibernating. Food had to be rationed, and there wasn't much else to do. So people did the only thing that kept them warm and slowed the burn of calories. They slept a lot. You'd rise for a short while, eat a hunk of preserved meat, mend a boot, feed the fire, then crawl back into bed, sometimes sleeping 14 to 16 hours a day. It was less laziness, more survival. You're not lounging, you're waiting out the dark, and you're not alone. The entire household piles into the same bed, wrapped in cloaks and old cloth. Children, grandparents, the occasional confused chicken, all snuggle together, a human furnace against the long night. People even spoke of a kind of winter stupor, a dreamy, half-wakeful state where you drift between sleep and thought, not quite dreaming, not quite alert. It wasn't unpleasant, just slow. Like your brain had decided to wander until the sun came back. Of course, not everyone could afford this kind of rest. Wealthier families still had duties. Servants still had fires to stoke, food to prepare. Monks still had to rise for their midnight prayers, winter or not. But for the common folk, especially in more rural or northern regions, sleeping most of the day and night during the harshest weeks wasn't rare. You curl deeper into the bedding. It smells like smoke and animal fat. There's a strange comfort to it, a sense that this blanket is your world now. Outside, snow has piled so high that your door barely opens. The sun won't rise until after breakfast, if you even have breakfast. Bread is being rationed now, and the last of the salted pork is reserved for Candlemas. Still, you sleep. There's no guilt here. No grind culture. No feeling of falling behind. You sleep not because you want to, but because nature requires it. And the darkness doesn't just touch the outside. It creeps into dreams. People reported more vivid, sometimes strange dreams during the winter. Perhaps it was the longer hours in bed. Perhaps it was the cold, tightening its grip on the body, loosening the grip on reality. One old folk tale tells of a woman who dreamed all through winter, only to wake and discover she'd written 3 songs in her sleep. Lyrics scratched onto the wall in charcoal. Another tells of a farmer who claimed to meet angels in his dreams each January. Then again, he also drank onion wine, so the jury's out on that one. Historians still debate whether this hibernation-like behavior was widespread or localized. There are references in medieval chronicles, journals, even church records warning against overindulgence in idleness during the dark months. But the idea that people semi-hibernated, slowing their metabolism and withdrawing into sleep, has growing support. You wonder what it would be like now. To sleep simply because the season told you to. No work calls, no street lights, just silence and blankets. You hear a creak above you, icicles shifting on the roof maybe, or a rat trying to wear socks. Either way, you're not getting up. Not now. Your body feels heavy, but not unpleasantly so. It's like the bed has claimed you. The world can wait. For now, the fire inside you is enough. Your eyes drift shut again. In this cold, thick silence, dreams feel more solid than the walls. You're no longer fully sure when the last sleep ended or the next begins. And that's okay. In this deep winter of the medieval mind, sleep isn't escape. It's the only season that matters. You stir, but you don't wake fully. There's pressure on your back, something rough under your hands. You're hunched over, wrapped in your cloak, not in bed, but in a church pew. Wait. You fell asleep at work, but no one scolds you. No one even looks twice. In fact, everyone around you, dozing off too. Welcome to the medieval workplace, where sleeping on the job wasn't just tolerated. It was practically built into the schedule. You shift in your seat, still half asleep, and realize you're in a monastery scriptorium, one of those quiet, chilly rooms where monks copy texts by hand. Your candle has burned halfway down, your quill still in your ink-stained fingers, and your head, resting gently on a half-finished pea from the Book of Psalms. Whoops, but don't worry, this kind of on-the-job nap wasn't unusual. Monks, clerks, and even town watchmen were known to drift off mid-task. It was cold, it was quiet, and sometimes the chants went on for hours. And besides, they weren't lazy. They were tired. Life was exhausting, physically and spiritually. People got up before dawn, fasted often, knelt for long hours in stone churches, and ate diets that would make a modern nutritionist cry. A bit of drowsiness. Understandable. Especially when your day began with matins at 2 a.m. and ended with vespers around 6 p.m. Some monasteries even allowed scheduled naps, short rest periods woven into the rhythm of the day. Think of it as divine siesta. You'd work, pray, nap, pray again, eat boiled peas, copy something in Latin, and repeat. You yawn and stretch a bit, trying to shake off the stiffness. Your knees ache. The pew is hard, but the silence is warm and strangely soft, like a woolen hood pulled over your ears. You glance at the monk beside you, eyes shut, fingers still resting on his rosary. It's not just monks, though. In rural villages, field workers often napped right in the fields, especially during long harvest days. A quick lie down in the hay under a tree wasn't lazy. It was necessary. You'd eat a little, drink a little ale, then stretch out and dream of rain clouds that actually showed up. Even night watchmen, those tasked with guarding towns and castles, were known to sneak naps. Some records mention guards being fined for sleeping on duty, but many more hint that it was a running joke. If the town didn't burn down during your shift, a nap wasn't the worst crime. But the most famous sleepers on the job, churchgoers. Medieval sermons could last hours. Priests delivered them in Latin, even though the average person barely spoke enough to order bread. Churches were drafty, the benches were hard, and after a long week of labor, well, who wouldn't nod off during a theological debate about transubstantiation? So people slept, quietly, politely, unless they snored. In which case, the priest might thwack a stick on the pulpit or toss a walnut. True story. We don't know why it was walnuts, but history insists. There's even a documented complaint from a 14th century friar who grumbled, "It is hard to speak the truth of the Lord to those whose mouths are open in sleep." Honestly? Fair. You shift again and try to stay awake, eyes heavy. The parchment in front of you blurs. You blink once, twice, then let your eyes close. There's something oddly comforting about being allowed to sleep here. Among peers, among prayers. No shame, just a small surrender. Historians still argue whether medieval people were always sleep-deprived, or if they simply didn't view sleep as private or sacred. Some believe the constant interruptions and unpredictable rhythms made them more adaptable. Others suggest that people, especially the poor, were in a near-perpetual state of exhaustion. But no one denies this. Sleep showed up everywhere. In pews, in towers, at work, in fields, in libraries, and yes, even at the royal court. You're starting to understand. Sleep, in the medieval mind, wasn't bound to bedtime. It was a necessity that found you wherever it could. Like a cat curling up in your lap mid-task. You didn't resist it. You respected it. Your quill slips from your fingers. You feel your head tilt forward. Someone chuckles quietly nearby. You don't care. You sleep. Just a little. Just long enough. This time, you don't wake. You're already in the dream. It's vivid, unsettlingly so. The sky is burning red. A staircase made of light stretches across the heavens, and angels in silver mail whisper your name as you float upward. Then, thunder. A serpent speaks in Latin. You fall, you wake. Inside the dream again. You're not dreaming like you usually do. You're dreaming like a medieval person. Because in the Middle Ages, dreams weren't just background noise from your brain. They were messages, warnings, or even judgments from higher or lower powers. You blink, still dreaming as the serpent vanishes. A cloaked figure approaches. It might be a saint. It might be your grandmother, or both. You don't ask, you just follow. Medieval people believed that dreams were profoundly significant. The church, poets, physicians, everyone weighed in. Your nightly visions might reveal a hidden sin, predict a coming disaster, or offer divine guidance. The trouble was knowing which was which. You once again see yourself on the staircase of fire, and suddenly remember, you forgot to confess last week. Your subconscious has just filed a spiritual complaint. In your waking medieval life, you would have told someone, maybe a confessor, maybe your local healer, maybe the neighbor who always seems a little too interested in your nightmares. There were entire books, dream manuals, meant to decode what you saw. Did you dream of teeth falling out? That meant death. Of course it did. A white horse? possibly a wedding, or possibly the apocalypse. Tough call. You drift deeper into the dream. The floor beneath you becomes a mirror. Your face is wrong, aged, cracked, but still you. Behind you, a saint holds a scroll. In front, a demon holds a spoon. You'd better hope the saint speaks first, because medieval theology taught that dreams could be tools of God, but also traps from the devil. Just like in waking life, your soul was vulnerable while sleeping, especially if you had unconfessed sins or ate too much cheese before bed. Seriously, bad digestion was a common scapegoat for morally suspicious dreams. You start to fall again. No staircase this time, just wind and darkness. In monasteries, some monks kept dream journals, logging their visions and nightmares in hopes of finding patterns. Others saw dreams as distractions, traps meant to test their spiritual discipline. A holy dream might send you to your abbot for counsel. A profane one, straight to the confessional, preferably before breakfast. You land in a quiet room, still dreaming, lit only by candlelight. Saints' faces stare at you from painted walls. They look disappointed. One of them speaks. You can't understand the words, but the tone is clear. You've been judged. Still, not all medieval dreams were grim. There are stories of visions leading to miracles. Peasant girls dreaming of buried relics, blind men dreaming of healing springs, even entire monasteries founded after a bishop dreamed of a talking fish. Yes, that's a real account. And no, the fish didn't get a vote. Dreams were also evidence in court, especially in matters of land or inheritance. The Virgin appeared to me in a dream, someone might say, and told me this field belongs to the church. Suddenly, that dream carries legal weight. You walk now through a hallway lined with doors. Each one pulses with light. One smells like smoke and salt. One glows with golden mist. One is locked. Chained, actually. You know what's behind it. You don't go near. You're aware, vaguely, that you're still asleep. Still wrapped in a wool blanket. Still breathing in a room with no fire. But this dream has rules, and you know enough now to respect them. Historians still puzzle over how seriously medieval people took their dreams. Some accounts read like metaphors, others like genuine trauma. But the cultural weight is undeniable. Dreams weren't private. They were shared, analyzed, feared. You didn't dismiss a dream as meaningless. That would be like ignoring a sermon. You reach the final door. It creaks open. Inside is your bed, your real bed. You lie down inside the dream, inside your body. And slowly, the images fade. The light softens. The whispers dissolve. You breathe. You're not being judged now, not watched, just dreaming again. But lighter this time, more human. You don't know if it meant anything, and that's okay. For now, the saints are quiet, and the demons are tired. You wake not from a dream, but from a sound. Distant, sharp, real. A bell, not the soft, holy kind from the monastery. This one is frantic, panicked, urgent. You sit up fast, blanket tangled at your feet. A flicker of orange dances against the far wall, and then you smell it. Smoke. No, not the gentle curl from a hearth. This is the thick, choking kind. Bitter, hot, hungry. You're out of bed before your thoughts even catch up. You throw open the shutter and see it. A building down the lane, already half swallowed by flame. A crowd is forming. Buckets are passing hand to hand. Someone's shouting, "Wake the miller, he's still inside." And this is exactly what people feared most at night in the medieval world. Not demons, not thieves, but fire. Because when everything around you, your roof, your wall, your furniture, your entire street, is made of wood and straw. One stray ember, and your town could vanish before sunrise. So while you were sleeping peacefully, or pretending to beside a toad pouch, someone else was awake, watching, listening, waiting. Enter the Night Watch. Or as you might call them now, the only reason your village is still standing. You hear his voice now, cutting through the smoke and chaos. Fire in the baker's lane, bucket line to the well. He's been on patrol since dusk, cloaked in thick wool, carrying a lantern and a staff. Not a soldier, not a hero, just a man with a responsibility too big for his tired eyes. The role of watchman was as thankless as it was vital. Cities like London, Paris, and Florence all had night watch systems by the 13th century. Their job, to patrol the streets, call the hours, look for signs of fire, and keep peace among the sleepless. They weren't glamorous. Often old or injured, sometimes conscripted from townsfolk on rotation, occasionally drunk, but when fire threatened, they were your first, and often only, line of defense. You hear the splash of water on cobblestones. The bucket brigade is working fast. Children cry. Someone's coughing hard. They must have been too close. You back away from the window, the smoke too thick now to be curious. Back in bed, you bury your nose in the blanket. The smell of ash is everywhere. And yet, this time, it's not the flames that make your heart pound. It's the fear of what would happen if no one was awake. Because unlike today, there was no fire department, no alarms, no hydrants. If you didn't wake your neighbors in time, they might not wake up at all. Fires weren't rare accidents. They were expected tragedies. Even laws were written in fear of the flame. Many towns passed curfew regulations, not for safety, but for fire prevention. After a certain hour, all cooking fires had to be extinguished, chimneys capped, lanterns doused. That's where the word curfew comes from, couvre-feu in Old French. Cover the fire. You pull the blanket over your face just for a moment. It smells faintly of sheep's wool and last week's stew. Cozy, if not fireproof. And yet, people slept. They had to. They trusted that the watchman would catch the first glow, that the bell would ring in time, that their walls wouldn't turn to ash before morning. Historians still argue how effective these night watches were. Some believe they stopped dozens of fires. Others think they were more about appearance than prevention. One more layer of ritual in a world ruled by fate. But you can't argue with the bell that woke you, or the feet pounding down the alley, or the fire that didn't spread to your own roof. You exhale slowly. The chaos is moving away now, down the street. The glow dims. The shouting fades. The fear recedes. Outside, the night watch calls the hour. 2 of the clock and all is well. It's not true, but it's comforting. You lie down again. No chanting monks, no prophetic dreams. Just you, the ashes in the air, and the knowledge that someone, somewhere, is watching the dark. Tonight, sleep feels like a risk you take on trust, but you take it anyway, because you're tired, and the fire's out. You wake not from a dream, but from a sound, distant, sharp, real. A bell, not the soft, holy kind from the monastery. This one is frantic, panicked, urgent. You sit up fast, blanket tangled at your feet. A flicker of orange dances against the far wall, and then you smell it. Smoke. No, not the gentle curl from a hearth. This is the thick, choking kind. Bitter, hot, hungry. You're out of bed before your thoughts even catch up. You throw open the shutter and see it. A building down the lane, already half swallowed by flame. A crowd is forming. Buckets are passing hand to hand. Someone's shouting, "Wake the miller, he's still inside." And this is exactly what people feared most at night in the medieval world. Not demons, not thieves, but fire. Because when everything around you, your roof, your wall, your furniture, your entire street, is made of wood and straw, one stray ember and your town could vanish before sunrise. So while you were sleeping peacefully, or pretending to beside a toad pouch, someone else was awake, watching, listening, waiting. Enter the Night Watch. Or as you might call them now, the only reason your village is still standing. You hear his voice now, cutting through the smoke and chaos. Fire in the baker's lane, bucket line to the well. He's been on patrol since dusk, cloaked in thick wool, carrying a lantern and a staff. Not a soldier, not a hero, just a man with a responsibility too big for his tired eyes. The role of watchman was as thankless as it was vital. Cities like London, Paris, and Florence all had night watch systems by the 13th century. Their job, to patrol the streets, call the hours, look for signs of fire, and keep peace among the sleepless. They weren't glamorous. Often old or injured, sometimes conscripted from townsfolk on rotation, occasionally drunk, but when fire threatened, they were your first, and often only, line of defense. You hear the splash of water on cobblestones. The bucket brigade is working fast. Children cry. Someone's coughing hard. They must have been too close. You back away from the window, the smoke too thick now to be curious. Back in bed, you bury your nose in the blanket. The smell of ash is everywhere. And yet, this time, it's not the flames that make your heart pound. It's the fear of what would happen if no one was awake. Because unlike today, there was no fire department, no alarms, no hydrants. If you didn't wake your neighbors in time, they might not wake up at all. Fires weren't rare accidents. They were expected tragedies. Even laws were written in fear of the flame. Many towns passed curfew regulations, not for safety, but for fire prevention. After a certain hour, all cooking fires had to be extinguished, chimneys capped, lanterns doused. That's where the word curfew comes from, couvre-feu in Old French. Cover the fire. You pull the blanket over your face just for a moment. It smells faintly of sheep's wool and last week's stew. Cozy, if not fireproof. And yet, people slept. They had to. They trusted that the watchman would catch the first glow, that the bell would ring in time, that their walls wouldn't turn to ash before morning. Historians still argue how effective these night watches were. Some believe they stopped dozens of fires. Others think they were more about appearance than prevention. One more layer of ritual in a world ruled by fate. But you can't argue with the bell that woke you, or the feet pounding down the alley, or the fire that didn't spread to your own roof. You exhale slowly. The chaos is moving away now, down the street. The glow dims. The shouting fades. The fear recedes. Outside, the night watch calls the hour. 2 o'clock and all is well. It's not true, but it's comforting. You lie down again. No chanting monks, no prophetic dreams. Just you, the ashes in the air, and the knowledge that someone, somewhere, is watching the dark. Tonight, sleep feels like a risk you take on trust, but you take it anyway. Because you're tired, and the fire's out. You stir beneath your blanket. A weight shifts beside you. Not heavy, but unmistakably human. You open your eyes and meet another pair, not your spouse, not your child, not someone you recognize at all, just a stranger in your bed. Welcome to the most intimate and completely normal part of medieval sleeping arrangements. Sharing beds with people you don't know. The practice was called bed sharing, and it was as ordinary then as locking your front door is now. You didn't need to like the person or know their name. You just needed to fit beside them, not mind waking up pressed against a complete stranger's knees. You blink, adjusting to the dim glow of the hearth. The person next to you is snoring softly. Their feet are cold. You silently adjust the blanket between you. It's scratchy and smells faintly of lard. Not ideal, but very medieval. Because beds weren't private in the Middle Ages. They were resources. Expensive, communal, and sometimes shared by 5 or 6 people at a time. Guests, servants, travelers, apprentices. If there was space, they were in. Think of it like a very sleepy version of Airbnb, but with less linen and more fleas. You lie back, trying to avoid elbow contact. And yet somehow, it's not that weird. The warmth is welcome, the presence of another body, oddly comforting. In this era, sleeping alone wasn't just lonely, it was inefficient. In inns, a stranger sharing was the norm. A traveler could pay for half a bed, and if someone else came along, boom, bedmate, male or female, child or adult. It wasn't about morality, it was about space. Even kings weren't exempt. Royal visitors often shared beds with their hosts as a sign of trust and closeness. Imagine arriving to the court of a duke, being handed a goblet of wine, and then casually slipping into his bed for the night. Not romantic, just protocol. In many households, there wasn't even such a thing as a bedroom, just a great room with pallets or frames pushed together, often layered with straw, wool, or, if you were fancy, feather beds. A family might sleep in tiers, parents near the fire, children around them, guests or servants against the walls. It made sense. Night was dangerous. Robbers, wild animals, house fires. Sleeping in groups wasn't just economical. It was protective. Safety in numbers, warmth in numbers, snoring in numbers. You wake. Not because of a noise, not because of a nightmare, just because. Your eyes open naturally, calmly, as if your body has finished a task and is ready for something else. The room is dim, not fully dark, but not yet dawn. Outside, the world holds its breath. The stars have shifted. The fire is a pile of glowing bones. You stretch, yawn, sit up. You're not groggy. You're not alarmed. You're just in the middle of your night, and that, perfectly normal. Because in the medieval world, you didn't sleep once per night. You slept twice. This was called segmented sleep or biphasic sleep, and it was so common that people didn't even think to question it. You'd go to bed not long after sunset, say 8 or 9 p.m., and sleep for 4 to 5 hours. Then you'd wake up naturally, stay awake for an hour or two, and go back to bed for another sleep. 2 sleeps, 1 night. Like clockwork, but without the clock. You stand quietly, wrap yourself in a cloak, and walk to the hearth. Someone has already added kindling. Maybe your bedmate, maybe a house spirit. No need to ask. During this watch, that midnight gap, people did everything. Prayed, read, sewed, checked on animals, stirred soup, had sex, wrote poetry, had deep, unhurried conversations. You wonder what you're supposed to do. The room is so quiet it feels like a sacred pause. You decide to light a little oil lamp. Its flicker is warm, familiar. You settle near it, fingers absently tracing patterns on your woolen sleeve. No one disturbs you. No one scolds you for being awake. No one says, you need to fix your sleep schedule. Because this was the schedule. Even religious texts and medical manuals mention this first sleep and second sleep, as if they were as natural as breathing. The period between them was called the watch, a gentle, productive interlude. Doctors even claimed it was the best time to conceive children. Your body, they believed, was rested, your humors balanced, your spirit quiet. You snort softly. Medieval doctors always had opinions about everything. You think back to last night's dream, the angels, the fire, the staircase. You scribble a few lines in a wax tablet, just enough to remember it later. Or not. It doesn't really matter. You look around. The others are stirring too. Someone's whispering a prayer. A child is curled against a dog, blinking in the low light. The grandmother adjusts her shawl and begins darning a sock. All of it quiet, unspoken, gentle. There's no rush, no tasks demanding attention. Just this moment in between. Some people even believed it was the best time to speak to God. Monks rose for matins, the middle of the night prayer during the same watch. If you were a villager, you might use it to reflect, to sit by the fire, to just be. Historians still marvel at how we forgot this rhythm. With the rise of artificial light and rigid work days, biphasic sleep faded. By the 18th century, the idea of a two-part night had vanished from the collective memory, replaced by our current expectation. One long, unbroken sleep. Or else something's wrong. But here, in this soft in-between, it feels right. Your breath is steady. Your thoughts drift but don't race. You're both awake and resting. It's not insomnia, it's intermission. You sip something warm, a little spiced cider, or maybe barley tea. It soothes your throat, sweetens the air. You think about nothing in particular, and then, as naturally as you rose, you return. To bed, to warmth, to the rest of the night that still waits. You lie down. The fire's glow kisses the ceiling beams. Your body knows this rhythm. It's older than clocks, deeper than habit. You've finished your watch. Now, sleep again. You pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders. The air has teeth tonight, cold teeth. And yet you feel oddly exposed, not because of the cold, but because you've just realized you're not wearing pajamas. Because pajamas weren't a thing. Not here, not now. In fact, you're either in your day clothes or completely naked. There wasn't much in between. You sit up, trying to rearrange the coarse wool around your legs. It scratches like hay. You squint into the near dark, hearing the soft rustle of others nearby, shifting, snoring, breathing. Somewhere, someone mutters in their sleep, a name or a prayer or both. And every single one of them is dressed strangely, by your standards anyway. Because in the Middle Ages, what you wore to bed depended entirely on who you were, how cold it was, and how much laundry you were willing to do. Spoiler, very little. For most peasants, undressing completely before bed was common. Why waste time ruining your day clothes with nighttime sweat and body heat? Why sleep in garments that took days to wash by hand in icy water? Skin was easier. Skin didn't need mending, so they slept naked, under wool blankets, sometimes wrapped in cloaks, often beside other naked sleepers. You may feel a little exposed, but for them, it wasn't shameful. It was practical. Modesty didn't apply once the shutters were closed and the fire went out. You shift, feeling the weight of the blanket like a second skin. Maybe you're one of the few who sleeps in a long linen shirt, if you're wealthier. Or maybe you still have your tunic on, because tonight's chill would steal the breath from a brass statue. Then again, if you were nobility, things got even stranger. Wealthy sleepers had nightshirts, sure, sometimes made of soft linen or even silk if they were rich enough to import it. But many noblemen preferred to sleep in just their hose, tight wool leggings, and maybe a short smock. And noble women. Nightgowns, yes, but layered under massive canopies, fur throws, and sometimes sleeping headpieces that looked like origami nightmares. You lie back, thinking of those odd head wraps, padded, pointed, sometimes wired to protect elaborate hairstyles. Imagine trying to sleep with a baked pretzel tied to your forehead. Fashion has its price. But again, there were no pajamas. The idea of having clothing just for sleep. Extravagant, wasteful, ridiculous even. Why own an extra garment for something no one saw, especially when cloth was expensive and every thread had value? Even the church had opinions. Of course it did. Sleeping naked. Fine, if you're alone. Sleeping naked next to someone else? Scandal. Sleeping clothed, alone, with thoughts of someone else? Still scandal. You can't win. There were, however, moral reasons to cover up at night. Some clergy insisted that being fully clothed at all times helped ward off temptation. In certain monastic orders, monks and nuns were instructed to sleep in their habits, ready to spring up for midnight prayers or, divine judgment. So you lie there, halfway dressed, halfway frozen, halfway amused. Somewhere in this room, someone is dreaming in full armor, another in nothing but a wool sock. Historians still debate the exact norms. Clothing inventories rarely list nightwear. Art gives us little to work with. But the overwhelming consensus is clear. Sleepwear as we know it simply didn't exist. You pull your scratchy wool tighter, curling into its warmth. Not comfortable, not exactly, but enough. Tomorrow you'll put your outer clothes back on, shake the straw from your hair, and walk into the day as if you didn't just sleep beside 6 other people in various states of undress. Tonight, though, you rest, in linen or wool, or nothing at all. No elastic waistbands, no cartoon prints, just body and breath and blanket. And if your toes get cold, well, that's what the communal dog is for. You wake again. Not fully, not loudly. Just enough to feel it. Light. A strange light. Cold, bluish, soft as fog, but sharp as ice. It slips through the wooden shutters and pools across the floor like spilled milk. Your skin tingles. The moon is out. And in this world, that's not good news. Because in the medieval imagination, the moon wasn't just a passive nightlight or a poetic backdrop. It was a force, a danger, a watcher. You pull the blanket to your chin, suddenly aware of how exposed you are. Not physically, but celestially. The moon sees you, and that was enough to make anyone nervous in the Middle Ages. People feared the moon like we fear carbon monoxide, quietly, superstitiously, and with no real way to stop it. In medieval thought, the moon could do all kinds of things. It could change your mood. It could rot your crops. It could drive you mad, hence the word lunatic, from luna, Latin for moon. You lie there, watching the silver beam creep up the wall. It feels cold on your face, even though it shouldn't. You're not alone in feeling this. Hundreds of years ago, physicians warned that moonlight could pull the humors from your body, especially through your eyes. Don't sleep with your face uncovered during a full moon, they said. Don't let children wander under it. Don't leave milk out. Don't let your dreams run wild. Tonight, they might. You remember the story told by the village healer about a boy who slept under moonlight and woke up mute for the rest of his life. Or the woman whose hair turned white after a moonbeam hit her through a cracked shutter. Of course, There were countermeasures. You could hang herbs above your bed, mugwort, vervain, and thyme to ward off lunar influence. You could sleep with your head to the north or scatter ashes at your doorway so that spirits riding moonlight would trip over them, which raises several questions about the coordination skills of ghosts. In truth, people feared the moon because it changed things. It pulled the tides. It made animals restless. It made people act strange. It turned otherwise sensible villagers into howling, pacing, wide-eyed versions of themselves. Night was dangerous already. But a moonlit night, that was a different beast. Midwives watched the moon when predicting births. Farmers planted or harvested based on its cycles. Thieves planned around it. And lovers, well, lovers had a complicated relationship with the moon. You glance again at the window. The moon is fat and full tonight. It stares like an eye that never blinks. It was believed that sleeping under moonlight could call forth visions, not divine ones like dreams of saints, but unpredictable ones. Madness, temptation, restless spirits. Some people even refused to sleep during a full moon. They'd sit up, drinking weak ale or humming low hymns until it passed behind a cloud or dipped below the hills. Others simply turned their beds toward the wall. You wonder if it's watching you now, but not all lunar beliefs were terrifying. Some thought the moon could heal. Moon water, collected at midnight and stored in silver, was said to cure melancholy. Moonstones, if worn correctly, could protect you from emotional storms. And of course, the moon was sacred to many folk traditions that saw it as feminine, cyclical, and divine. Still, you don't move. You stay tucked in, wary but not panicked, just aware. Historians still argue about how seriously these fears were held. Some see them as superstition. Others think they reflect real concerns about madness, fertility, weather, and survival. After all, when your world runs on firelight and rumor, the moon is both mystery and monitor. You shift your pillow, turning your back to the window, just in case. The moon can watch someone else tonight. You close your eyes. You try to fall asleep again. But your heirs won't let you. Because tonight, like every night in the medieval world, silence is a luxury you don't have. There's no such thing as quiet. You flinch at the first sound, a sharp creak above you. Likely just the wooden beams settling, though you swear one of them whispered. Then, snoring, loud, labored. Someone 2 bodies away sounds like they're trying to swallow a goat in their sleep. You're not sure if they're breathing or breaking in slow motion. And that's just the beginning. Let's set the scene. To your left, a baby is crying. Not your baby, just a baby. To your right, someone coughs. The wet, phlegmy kind that tells you they'll still be coughing come spring. A dog barks in the courtyard. Chickens mutter in their sleep. A pig grumbles once, then again. Who knew pigs dreamed? The wind howls against the thatch. Rain begins to tick against the roof. Soft at first, then heavier, then dripping through. Yes, through. Because your roof leaks. Of course it does. The floor creaks as someone gets up to use the chamber pot. They do it loudly. No shame, no apologies. Because here's the truth. In the Middle Ages, sleeping was social, and that meant noisy. You shared space, you shared beds, you shared breath and body heat and bacteria and bodily functions, and with that came sound. All the time, even in castles, the big fancy kind, lords and ladies often slept in chambers full of attendants. Soft whispers, rustling straw, and nighttime prayers murmured in Latin were as much a part of the night as dreams. You sigh, the fire pops, Embers shift like bones cracking. Outside, you hear a fox scream, a horrifying, human-sounding wail. You hope it's a fox. Then come the bells, not just one, several. If you live in a town, the church rings them every 3 hours, marking the canonical hours, matins, lauds, prime, and so on. Because even if you're trying to sleep, God's schedule does not sleep. Then, just when you think your ears can't take more, someone farts. Loudly. Triumphant. Possibly in Latin. No one laughs. This happens too often to be funny anymore. So no, your medieval sleep soundtrack isn't gentle waves or white noise or soft lo-fi beats. It's the symphony of survival. The real, bodily, unfiltered, alive noises of people stacked together like firewood in the night. And let's not forget the creepy ones. Occasionally, you'll hear a whisper when no one's awake. A knock with no visitor. A breath not your own. People back then believed in nighttime visitations. Ghosts, fairies, demons. A branch tapping the window might not be a branch at all. It could be the spirit of a drowned cousin or a jealous neighbor who died during Lent. And let's be honest, when you're half asleep and the darkness moves, it doesn't take much to believe the impossible. Historians still debate just how noisy medieval nights were. Some claim we overestimated. Others argue that humans then had a higher tolerance for shared space and sound. That without smartphones or solitude, people simply accepted the noise as part of sleep. Like breathing. You roll over, you itch. Not in a too warm blanket way, not even in a, was that straw or a spider kind of way. You itch because something tiny just scurried across your neck, and now it's gone. Welcome to the true companions of medieval sleep. Bedbugs, fleas, lice, mites. Maybe something with too many legs and no name at all. You sit up slowly, blinking into the dark. The blanket falls from your shoulders, and you swear something the size of a grain of rice just parachuted off the edge. You scratch your elbow, then your ankle, then your soul. Because back then, cleanliness wasn't measured in showers or scented candles. It was measured in how infested your bed was, and how recently you'd boiled your undergarments. And here's the thing, everyone had bugs, even the king. You reach down and pat the straw mattress beneath you. Lumpy, damp at the edges, stuffed with dried grasses and hay and, if you're really lucky, some thistle. The perfect habitat for every insect with an appetite for skin, blood, or dead skin cells. There's a reason people called their beds buggy. It wasn't metaphor. Fleas, in particular, were the true stars of medieval bedtime. They didn't just bite. They bounced. They multiplied. They hitched rides on everything from cloaks to cats. People kept flea combs beside their beds like we keep phones. You shift again. Something crunches faintly under your knee. You choose not to investigate. Bedbugs? Oh, they were poets of pain. Hiding in the seams of the bed, the joints of the frame, the little folds of the sheet you barely wash once a season. They waited for you to go still. Then, feast. Medieval people didn't just tolerate these pests. They lived with them, named them, even joked about them. One 14th century writer called his fleas his bedfellows. Another chronicler, biting with sarcasm, claimed his bedbugs helped keep him awake for midnight prayers. They're diligent, if nothing else, he wrote. You don't know if that's comforting or horrifying. And don't forget lice, head lice, body lice, even eyelash lice. Yes, those existed. No, don't Google it. These weren't signs of poverty. They were signs of being alive in an era without washing machines. People fought back in creative ways. They hung herbs, lavender, rosemary, wormwood, over their beds to repel bugs. They doused the seams of their mattresses with vinegar or oils. Some slept with garlic tied around their necks, not for vampires, for lice. They even burned the bedding once in a while. As a treat, you reach behind your ear and find nothing. Probably. But the most surprising part? People still slept. With the bugs. Despite the itching. Despite the crawling. Despite the low, relentless throb of tiny bites. Because what else could they do? There was no DDT, no deep clean cycle, no memory foam miracle, only straw, sweat, and stubbornness. You slept because you had to, and because everyone else was scratching too. Historians still argue whether people in the Middle Ages were used to these conditions or just constantly miserable. But judging by the number of jokes, poems, and casual mentions in letters, it seems they learned to live with it. Or maybe, like now, they simply got too tired to care. You sigh. Your fingernail drags gently across your forearm. A red welt rises slowly, like a cursed moon. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. You lie back down, pull the blanket up, breathe, and whisper to the darkness. Let the bugs have their meal. Just let me have my sleep. You lie there, half asleep, listening. The usual sounds. Coughing, creaking, snoring, scratching. But something feels off. It's not what you hear, it's what you don't. No bolt sliding shut, no lock clicking into place, no bar across the door. Because in this little medieval home, like most others, the front door is still unlocked. And not by accident. In the Middle Ages, people didn't always lock their doors at night. Sometimes they couldn't, because there were no locks. Other times they chose not to, because they didn't fear strangers. They feared being seen as secretive even more. You sit up, squinting toward the entrance. Just a wooden plank. Maybe a latch. Maybe nothing. If someone really wanted to come in, they could. And here's the twist. Sometimes they did. Medieval doors weren't always barriers. They were thresholds, meant to let in travelers and neighbors and the occasional wandering monk with a good story and a very cold nose. Privacy, as we think of it today, didn't exist. Not socially, not architecturally. Most homes were single-room spaces where sleeping, eating, and dying all happened in the same 10 feet. So the idea of a sealed, locked, do-not-disturb door? Odd. Suspicious even. Closing your door tightly at night could imply you were hiding something. A sin, a stolen item, or just pride. And pride. That was nearly as bad as theft. You shiver. A breeze licks through the gaps in the wood. Somewhere in the village, a dog barks once. Not in warning, just as if to say I'm still here. Some towns had night curfews, yes. But locking your house, that was more likely if you were rich. Nobles had heavy wooden doors with iron bolts. Merchants in cities began installing locks, especially if they kept goods in sight. But for average villagers, the door was a communal membrane. During emergencies, neighbors needed to reach each other. During childbirth, sickness, fire, you had to be accessible. In some places, you'd even leave your door slightly open to show hospitality. In others, you might tie a piece of cloth to the latch, a signal to the village midwife, a lover, or a priest who was bad at knocking. And if you did try to keep people out too forcefully, you risked being labeled unneighborly. That word had weight. It meant you'd be the last to get help when the fire came, or the plague, or worse. You lie back, heart thudding a little harder now. You imagine shadows moving outside, the soft crunch of straw beneath a foot. Is someone coming in? But no one does. Because here's the paradox. Though the door's unlocked, the village watches itself. Everyone knows everyone. Every cough, every baby's cry, every dog's bark is someone's alarm system. You live surrounded by people, not just physically, but socially. And that closeness, it's your real security. Still, you can't help but wonder, what if someone did walk in? What if they were lost, hungry, or worse? And yet, night after night, the door stays just the way it is. Closed, unbolted, trusted. Historians still argue about how common this was. Some claim most homes used at least a latch. Others say open-door culture was widespread, especially in small villages. But one thing is clear. Secrecy was more dangerous than vulnerability. You breathe in, exhale slowly. The breeze drifts through the cracks in the wood. Not unpleasant now, just part of the rhythm. You're not locked in, the world's not locked out. And somehow, that's enough. You're dreaming, not floating on a cloud dreaming. Number this one's weirder. You're sitting at a table. A feast spreads before you. Roast meats, honeyed figs, a wheel of cheese that breathes when you look away. Beside you, a saint gently pats your shoulder and says, "Don't trust the cabbage." You wake up confused and hungry. Welcome to medieval dream logic, where saints, demons, vegetables, and distant relatives all shared space in your sleeping mind. Dreams weren't just random firing of neurons to the medieval person. They were messages from God, from the devil, from your gut, from someone. You sit up slowly, blinking away the image of that wheezing cheese. What did it mean? Is cabbage evil? Is your soul in danger? Should you stop eating after sunset? In the Middle Ages, the answer would be yes, and also maybe. But definitely take it seriously. People didn't separate dreams from waking life the way we do now. Dreams were a legitimate source of prophecy, moral instruction, and sometimes legal testimony. You roll over, staring at the beams above. They creak, like ribs of some enormous, slumbering beast. Dreams were studied, dissected, even classified in medieval texts. There were dream manuals that laid out what each symbol meant. Birds were messages. Teeth meant death. Cabbage, well, cabbage might mean gas, or envy, or divine warning, depending on the seasoning. Scholars like Macrobius divided dreams into 5 types. Visio, a true vision. Oraculum, a prophetic message. Insomnium, a dream caused by physical state. Somnium, symbolic. And phantasma. Basically, a bad burrito before bed. So when you dreamed of flying naked through a cathedral while holding a turnip, that wasn't meaningless. That was a code to interpret. You think back to your dream, the saint. Was it St. Cuthbert or St. Apollonia? Someone with glowing fingers and a very serious brow. The cabbage looked smug. You should definitely not eat cabbage tomorrow. People in the Middle Ages recorded their dreams in journals, in letters, even in court records. There are documents of people claiming that a dream warned them of a murder, or revealed a hidden will, or provided the solution to a math problem they'd never understood before. Even monarchs consulted dream interpreters. A bad dream could delay a battle. A good one might inspire a marriage. And if a nun dreamed of the Virgin Mary handing her a fish wrapped in gold lace, that dream might end up painted on a chapel wall. Still, not all dreams were sacred. The devil, they believed, could slip into your dreams, whisper lies, show tempting visions, plant doubt, which is why many people prayed before bed, not for protection from burglars, but from deceptive dreams. You remember hearing a monk say once, "What visits your sleep touches your soul." And of course, dreams could come from the body itself. Too much cheese. Expect chaos. Wine before bed. Prepare for passionate declarations to geese. Sleeping on your left side. More likely to have prophetic dreams, or so said the healers. You rub your eyes. A faint echo of your dream still hangs there. That table, the cheese, the saint, the cabbage. You wonder what a modern therapist would say. Probably something expensive. Historians still debate how literal people took their dreams. Some see it as symbolic, a blend of faith and folklore. Others argue dreams were treated with genuine weight, especially if they aligned with scripture or communal fears. But one thing is certain. Medieval people dreamed richly. Their imaginations, fed by a world of saints and monsters, created nightscapes both strange and sacred. You pull the blanket tighter, smile faintly, and let your mind drift again. Maybe this time you'll dine with angels, or ride a fish across a sky made of bread, or just sleep undisturbed. Whatever comes next, it won't be boring. Not in a world where even cabbages have opinions. You hear it. Not loud, not violent. Just a knock. 3 soft raps on the wooden door. Your blood stills. You don't move. You barely breathe. Because in the Middle Ages, a knock at midnight was never just a knock. You stare at the entrance. No lock, no bolt, no blessed reason for someone to be there right now. The room is silent, except for the steady breathing of sleepers around you. None of them stir, just you. And the knock again. You swallow. Midnight visitors in the medieval world carried weight. Symbolic, spiritual, social. You weren't just getting an inconvenient neighbor. You were being chosen. Sometimes it was real. A traveler lost on the road, seeking warmth or bread or just presence in a dark and terrifying world. Hospitality was sacred. Turning someone away into the night could be a sin, or a death sentence, or both. You were supposed to answer. You were supposed to help. But sometimes, it wasn't a traveler. In medieval folklore, a midnight knock could mean a spirit, a revenant, the soul of someone not properly buried, a fairy in disguise, testing your kindness, a demon wearing a face you trust, or more simply, an omen. If no one stood at the door, it meant someone was about to die. If it came in a dream, it meant someone already had. If you opened it and saw no one, well, best to burn some sage, throw salt over your shoulder, and maybe sleep somewhere else for a few nights. You sit up slowly, blanket falling away from your shoulders. The air is ice. You can feel it in your teeth. Should you answer? You glance around the room. Still sleeping. All of them. Maybe you imagined it. Then it comes again. Softer this time. More polite, and somehow worse. You stand, tiptoe across the cold floor. Each board groans under your weight like an ancient door hinge. You reach the threshold, hand on the latch. The air smells like wet stone and iron. And then, nothing. Just silence. The kind that listens. You step back. You don't open it. You don't need to. Because you remember what the village priest once said, not all knocks want to be answered. There were stories, always stories, of people who vanished after answering a knock that came at the wrong hour. They'd follow a hooded figure into the woods and never return, or they'd open the door and see themselves staring back. Yes, that was a popular one, the double self-knock. If you saw your own face at the door, it meant your time was up. It wasn't scary in the story. It was just inevitable. You don't know what you believe. Maybe it's just wind. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's something ancient, older than this cottage, older than stone, just tapping to remind you it's still out there. Historians still puzzle over how deeply these beliefs ran. Some dismiss them as bedtime tales. Others believe they were coping mechanisms, ways to explain death, dreams, or the strange creaks of a world without electricity. Either way, you decide to wait. You walk back to your pallet, slide under the covers, close your eyes. If it was someone real, they'll knock again. If it wasn't, let it stay outside. You roll over. The room feels heavier now, but also calmer, as if whatever knocked has moved on, or accepted your answer, or perhaps it was never knocking at all. Just a memory, just a warning, just the house. Remembering. You stir. It's not sudden, not jarring. It's the kind of waking that comes from light, not alarm. Somewhere beyond the shutters, the sky has shifted from black to gray-blue, the kind of color you can only describe if you've ever watched a fire turn to ash. The room is still dim, still heavy with sleep, but the sounds have changed. No more nighttime rustles or muffled coughs. Now there's the shuffle of feet, a creaking yawn, the clink of a pot being stirred, the low murmur of voices sliding back into waking life. You open your eyes. Your breath puffs a little cloud in the cold air. You're awake. You've survived the night, and in the medieval world, that was never something to take for granted. You sit up slowly. Your back aches in familiar places. The kind of soreness that means you lived, you rested, and you're still here. The blanket is damp near the edges. The straw beneath you has shifted into odd, human-shaped piles. Across the room, someone is already dressed, or, more accurately, is still dressed. Remember, undressing fully for sleep wasn't the norm. You simply curled into bed in the same garments you worked in, maybe added a layer, maybe not. They nod at you, eyes still puffy, hair matted. It's a soft moment, the kind of acknowledgement that says, yes, you too, you made it. The air smells of wood smoke and onions. Maybe there's a little leftover pottage warming over the fire. Maybe not. Either way, your stomach growls. You stand, slowly, carefully. Because in the medieval morning, your first thoughts aren't of emails or errands or phone screens. They're of survival. Did the livestock make it through the cold? Did the fire stay lit? Did the bread rise? Did the sky stay still? You peek outside, dew on the grass, mud at the threshold. A rooster yawns, not crows, yawns, and a cart rattles softly in the distance. Someone's already hauling water. Someone else is chasing a goose with the conviction of a man trying to reclaim his dignity. Life, as always, has resumed. And inside you, something settles. The fear of the night, the knocking, the moonlight, the itch, the snore symphony. It's already slipping away. Not forgotten, but tucked into that quiet space where dreams go when the sun rises. You rub your eyes, splash water on your face from a cold basin, and breathe. Historians often try to describe what it felt like to live in the medieval world. They talk about hardship, routine, piety, pain. But mornings were a reset. Each day began with the same simple miracle. You woke up. No antibiotics, no central heat, no soundproofed bedrooms or posture-correcting pillows. Just shared air, shared sleep, shared dreams and fears and farts and prayers. And still, every morning, people rose to feed animals, to kneel in churches, to sweep dirt floors, to gossip, to worry, to hope. You walk toward the fire now. Someone hands you a bit of bread, hard, dry, but warm at the center. You chew slowly, quietly. Someone else smiles, holding a wooden cup of watered ale. You nod. Take it. Sip. Your throat thanks you. Your head begins to soften. You made it, not just through the night, but through the 1,000 small dangers and discomforts that stitch themselves through every medieval bedtime. Now, as the sun edges higher and the room brightens, just barely, you feel it. You've lived their night. You've seen their fears, heard their sounds, scratched their scratches, and dreamed their strange, cabbage-filled dreams. And though your bed may be different, your mattress more plush, your blankets less bug-friendly, a small part of you now remembers what it was like to sleep, when sleep wasn't guaranteed, when night was something you moved through, not escaped from. So as you stretch, blink, and prepare to return to your own world, take one last breath with them, with all those who ever shared a straw mattress, a cold floor, or a whispered prayer before dawn. You don't need to lock your door tonight. You don't need to watch for moonlight, but maybe, just maybe, you'll remember. And as you drift off, whenever that is, may your sleep be just strange enough to feel real and just peaceful enough to forget the bed bugs. Now close your eyes. Let your breath slow. Let the noise fade. Let the fire die. Let the shutters creak shut one last time. Let the blanket cover you like a whispered spell. You're safe now. You're home. You're resting.